Hey guys, what's going on? So Steve and I are getting ready to work on this 2002 GMC behind me. It's a 2500HD, has a 6.0 in it, and we're getting ready to do a water pump in it. So we'll show you how to do that and things you might encounter along the way. Before we get started, remember to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and subscribe to all of our notifications. That way you'll get a heads up when we upload a new video. All right, so before we begin, here are all the tools we used throughout the video. We used the breaker bar. Here's a little tool, a button tool for the trim pieces that we need to get out. We had a 10 millimeter and an 8 millimeter and a 15 millimeter socket. We also used 10 millimeter deep. We used a set of pliers to get the hoses off, the clamps off the hoses. It might be useful to have, a couple of extensions. We used the pipe wrench and the fan clutch tool right here to loosen up the bolt on the fan clutch. We used the bungee cord to tie up the radiator hose out of the way, and this pick tool to help take the radiator hose off of like the thermostat, stuff like that, and you're gonna need a ratchet.
All right, so we're gonna start tearing into this water pump, and this is the same job as the 5.3 liter. It's the same exact procedure. So we're gonna pull the air hat off up on here just to cover for the engine. Pull that out of the way, and we're gonna take the snorkel off here. Clamp over here, and we have our pick tool that we can remove this clamp for the hose right here. Get that out of the way. Slide this out. Just want to break the seal loose on this. I'll get this out of the way, and then we're going to take this cover off here, and we're going to remove the top part of the shroud. If you have a pick tool like this to remove the button plugs, it makes it easy. Get these all out, save them. If you're doing this out in the cold, these can get brittle and they can break, so you kind of want to be gingerly with them. You got to reuse them. Shroud has button plugs on it as well down here that you're going to see. So there's one here and then there's one over here. And to get to the drain plug, you could roll under it right now and access the drain plug for the radiator, but we're gonna get to the radiator, to the drain plug after we pull the shrouds off, and we'll get it from the top so you guys really get a good view on seeing it. So we got some hoses to remove here. And then this one here, it's got another plug underneath it. And I like to take a tie wrap, and we can just pull this over out of our face for right now. I don't want to hang it on this regulator here. I'm just going to get a tie wrap or a bungee cord, and I'm just going to tug it up out of the way so that I have some room, some access. See if I can hook it on to something over here. Gonna damage anything. Out of the way. So we got two button plugs down here. We got one here and one here. We're using the same tool that we used. We're gonna just get underneath it, get them to pop up a little bit. Remove that one. And get the other side now. One there. And we got one over here. Squish your hand in there a little bit. All right, so now we got the 4 of these up. We got 2 10mm up here. We're gonna zip off with the impact gun, and then we're gonna take the top of the shroud right off. Move the top of the shroud. Now the bottom of the shroud is just sitting in there into these clips. We don't really have to remove the bottom of the shroud and the clips if we don't need to. But what we can do is we'll snap the we're gonna crack this loose right now, which is the fan. And we need a fan clutch tool to do that. And we have that. We're going to remove the fan clutch tool. And we need to hold this with a pair of, I use a pipe wrench to hold this from turning. So to get this off, we're going to go counterclockwise looking at the engine. And that's going to crack this nut loose. So we're going to get our set up to do that right now. And I'm going to take the belt off of the engine right now by 15mm socket and a ratchet. We're going to remove the belt, and then we're going to clamp the pulley with the pipe wrench, and then we're going to smack this spanner wrench, fan clutch wrench, and crack this thing loose. And once we get the fan off, we'll pull the shroud out so that you have easy access to see the drain plug for the radiator. And then we'll drain the coolant out of it. All right, so we're gonna take the belt off. Right now we got a 15mm on it. And we retract the tensioner and we can slide the belt off. And we're gonna take the belt off, get it right up out of the way, because it's gonna get wet as we take the water pump off, and we're trying to keep the belt a little dry if we can. All right, let's get the fan clutch tool ready and the tool to hold the pulley. Okay, so we have our fan clutch tool here, slid on top of it. We'll measure it out and tell you the size within the video. Now, we're replacing this water pump, and the pulley comes with the water pump, okay? So we don't really care that we're gonna put a little crimp in it right now to take it off. So otherwise you would leave the belt on and you would have to try and smack this wrench to crack this thing loose if you were trying to reuse your water pump for some reason. There's really nothing else to grab on. There's no bolts here like there is on some other styles. So you basically have to crack this thing so loose. So I take a small pipe wrench and I slide it onto the pulley and I tighten it down, and I can sit it onto the idler pulley, and we're just gonna crack this thing loose now. And let's see if it works. And it did. Look at that, huh? It really didn't damage the pulley, you know. Now, when you're taking this off, you got to be careful that you don't drop the fan here into the radiator. So we're spinning the pulley back. I'm going to take this right off. Okay, pull this right out. Now the shroud is going to easily come out of this thing. We can just pull it out of the holders, and it's not easily going to come out because it's got clamps on it for these hoses. Which I kind of forgot about. Which is right here. That's all right. We have our same tool here. Is. Okay. Okay, now down here we can see the petcock on the radiator. So we could show it to you right here now. It's right down here. And we're going to put a big pan underneath this because these things make a friggin' mess. And we don't want to get antifreeze all over the place. So we're going to get a couple pans underneath here. We're going to crack this loose with some pliers and start draining the coolant out of it. Now you could roll underneath this thing from the very beginning. It's kind of difficult to get to get at that drain plug with the shroud in place, but you can do it. You probably squeeze your hand down on this side here. I choose to just pull it like this and then drain it. So that's what we're gonna do. If you got a big drain pan like this thing, it's great. Because once we pull that water pump off, it's just kind of leaks everywhere and you really can't control the spill. So we'll slide this right underneath the water pump area and we'll get this thing underneath the drain. Problem with the drain is it falls its way into the radiator saddle and it's like it's raining under there. It's very hard to keep it controlled. All right, so we got our pliers. We're gonna crack this loose and it's gonna start making a mess. And we hope we catch it. Crack our radiator cap loose. But it drains right into the radiator saddle and then it just kind of goes everywhere. So it's a sucky setup. We'll let this drain down and it's coming out of a good clip. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove our hose from the water pump up here with the spring clamp and slide the clamp down, and we'll slide the hose off and out of the way. And this tensioner assembly doesn't come with the water pump, so we're going to unbolt this. And this is all 15 millimeters, so we'll just crack these 3 15s loose. We'll zip them off with the impact gum, and we're going to take off our hoses on this side. We come around this side, Tom. Once the system is drained down, we're going to remove these 2 hoses and this hose, and these are all connected to the water pump. So these 3 hoses will come off. This tensioner assembly will come off. And then at that point, with this hose off, the water pump is stripped all down and it's just ready. And there's only 6 bolts that hold it on, 3 on each side. It's really slick, it comes apart nice. So after it's drained, we'll start removing all of that. All right, so now we're gonna take the clamps off. We're gonna take the 4 hoses off we have to take off. The top hose here, and we'll squeeze the clamps down. a hose pick tool to release these. I'm just gonna squeeze them for now. Slide them back. All right, to get these two, it's a little easier with this out of the way, so we're gonna take the 15 millimeter impact and get these three off right now. We cracked these loose earlier. Put this on the bench. All right, let's get these other two clamps out of the way. We're gonna get a hose pick tool and get underneath these and slide these back. We've got this one last one here to grab. I do not have the fancy spring tool to take these off. When you have a restricted area, they're really nice. I've been getting away with pliers for years, so. All right, let me get the hose pick tool. We're gonna get underneath the hose pick, the hoses without poking a hole through them, twist them off. We've got our pan set underneath here, so we should catch the rest of our antifreeze. And I can't twist these, so we're gonna get the pick tool under them. Okay, we got the hose pick tool. I wanna slide it underneath. And you wanna go towards the metal with it all the time. You don't want to pinch a hole through the hose. Okay. This is gonna get some coolant out of it. So we moved our pan a little bit, but still, we're gonna just kind of let it come out as it does. We can tuck it back here. Go to the next one. You gotta be careful with the hoses, like I said. Once you get it in there, you're just working it around the hoses. And then you can start sliding the hoses back gently. And they're all gonna puke coolant out of them, so. It sounds like most of it's going in my pan, fortunately, but I'm sure it's not. That's the rest of the water pump leaking coolant out of the block. It's very hard to get everything out of these without making a mess. So once these things are all drained down, we can remove the upper hose now, same procedure. Tuck that up out of the way. All right, so we've got all the hoses off the water pump now, and all the clamps. And we're just waiting for these to finish drizzling out the coolant. And then we got basically 6 bolts, 3 right here and 3 on the other side. They're all 10 millimeters. They're very easy to get to. I'm gonna crack them loose with a 3/8 ratchet, an extension, and a deep socket. And then I'm going to use a little impact driver and zip them all out. I'll leave these very top bolts, this one and the one on this side, in at the very end so that I can remove it with one hand. And the other one will be holding the impact driver. And it comes off pretty slick. So, and then there's only 2 gaskets. All right, so we got the hoses out of the way, and we're gonna get a ratchet set up with an extension and a socket. Like I said, we're gonna crack these loose and we'll zip this off, and then the pump comes right off. All right, so we're gonna crack these loose, and the 10s. And I don't like to just impact anything. I like to feel it as you're pulling it apart. Make sure you don't have a bound up bolt and you'll just snap the head off of it. So, and when we put this back together, we're gonna just run them down very slowly with the impact gun, and then we're gonna hand torque them. Okay, so these are all cracked loose, so now I can zip them out with the gun. We're gonna have a tool list that you need. Not a lot of tools to do this job. So these bolts, we can clean them up on the wire wheel. All right. All these bolts are the same length. You don't have to worry about getting them mixed up. And we're gonna run them up on the wire wheel. They're really not too bad, but we'll clean them up on the wire wheel to make sure they're nice and clean, grease these up a little bit. So now we're gonna take the last 2 bolts out and then remove the water pump, and we'll bring it over and let's get a spot where we can put this water pump, because we're gonna have to unbolt the thermostat from it. So let's get this. Okay, get that one out. Okay, the pump is completely unbolted at this point, and we're going to remove it. No matter how much coolant you try to get out of this sucker, it's still got some in it. All right, let's get it over here. Now, you have the last 2 bolts on the back side. You can see the way the gaskets are set up on it. So we're going to grease up the new water pump, put the new gaskets on with the bolts. But a lot of times when you get a water pump, we went with an AC Delco because I don't always have a lot of luck with aftermarket. I'd rather pay a little more for the original equipment one. So I got the AC Delco one, and we're going to change the thermostat over from this one to the new one. So we're gonna get these bolts wire wheeled, we'll open up the pump, and then we'll show you how we're gonna set the gaskets. All right, so we just cracked the 2 10mm loose with a ratchet. The thermostat comes with the housing, it's all together. We're not having a problem with that. So we're gonna reuse that. And we're gonna wire wheel these up. And they give us a new O-ring in the kit for this. There's no gasket around it, so they give you different applications for, because this water pump will fit a 5.3 or the 6 liter. So we're gonna wire wheel these up. We're gonna never seize these, okay, because we're big never seize people. And we're gonna remove this gasket with the pick, clean the thing out, put the new O-ring in, we're gonna grease it up, and we'll come back to you. All right, so we got our thermostat greased in it. We cleaned the groove out with a pick, threw the O-ring back in there, put a little thin coat of grease on it. We got our new bolts that are, we just wire wheeled. We're gonna put some never seize on them for the thermostat bolts. The thermostat was changed from this customer at one time, so he chose to go ahead with the original one, which is fine. So we're gonna bolt this thing on, and thermostat's another 20 bucks, 25 bucks, comes with the housing. So we're gonna tighten that by hand. Get it snug. And then we're going to flip the water pump over, and we're going to grease up the back side. We've already cleaned our bolts for the water pump, and we're going to get those ready to go as well. And they're right here. We're going to put a thin coat of never sees on these, and we're going to flip this pump over, and we're going to grease up the gaskets with a thin coat of grease. It kind of holds them in place, and just an old trick that I was always taught. A little thin coat of never sees. You never know when you're going to have to go back in there again. You're doing yourself a favor by putting this stuff on now. And I'm not using a ton of it. Prevents the oxidation buildup in there. Alright, now to flip the pump over. We got our thermostat mounted. I'm going to flip the pump over. We're going to grease the plates here, the mating surface, with just a little bit of grease. And that's going to stick our gaskets down. We're going to put grease on both sides of the gasket. So after we tighten this down, we should have a little grease ooze out all around the edges of it. And that way there, we're going to know that we have a good mating surface and that it got bolted on evenly. We're going to stick the gaskets on this thing for now, and then we're going to go clean our surface on the block. You got these two right here. Gaskets really only go on one way. So, let those. And the bolts will come up through the bottom here. And they'll when we get it, we're going to be standing these up. We're going to slide this thing on together like this, and we're going to start our bolts by hand and then snug them down a little bit with the impact gun, and then we're going to tighten everything by hand. Now I'm going to put another coat on this side, a little bit of grease on this side. Gasket is what's going to do the sealing here, this orange gasket. So we're going to get a razor scraper and scrape the block, make sure it's clean. They normally come apart pretty clean, you know, so with this style gasket. So, all right, let's go get a scraper and clean that. This is all ready to go on. Thermostat is mounted. Like I said, we got all the bolts. We're going to walk over and just catch these two top bolts very loosely, and then we'll get everything caught, and then we can suck the thing in nice and smooth. Let me get a gasket scraper. All right, I got a little scraper here, and these usually clean up really easy. So we're going to clean this thing off. You know, you can get your little cookie cutter in here, your little side grinder with the cookie thing on it. I think if you just scrape it like I'm doing it, and you get a little sandpaper in there, it's going to be just as clean. So, like I said, these come apart pretty good. But if you want to clean it with one of the air scrapers, you can do that as well. So we're going to get in here with some sandpaper and scrape this, sand this, and we'll wipe it down and make sure it's nice and clean. Came off pretty clean, so not a lot of stuff on here, so. All right, we're gonna dry it and then clean it with some paper. All right, so I'm just gonna wipe it down. And we got a little piece of used sandpaper here. And we're just gonna scrape it up a little bit with this. Okay, we're wiping our finger with it. It's nice and smooth. I don't feel any burrs with it. It's gonna have a little coolant that's gonna weep out of it a little bit, which is normal. So I've used the grinder on these things too, and they fit in pretty good. Okay, it's real smooth all the way around. All right, we're gonna grab our water pump. We got the impact gun set up on it, and we're gonna catch a couple of bolts. I'm gonna send it home. We got the gaskets all sitting in place. We're gonna lower it down. So I want to catch the top one. By hand. And we can catch this top one over here. Okay, so we got them, they're caught, they're sitting there now. I know my gasket ain't moving. Okay, now, after you get them all started, if you're not sure, if you got them, if your gasket moved, you can slide the pump back now and look, and you see that our gaskets are all lined up and all the bolts are through them. If you got bolts through 2 of them, you got bolts through 3 of them. So now these are all in place, and I can use the impact gun to just run them down. That's all I'm looking to do. Okay. These have all been started. Now I'm going to snug them all up by hand. You can go in a sequence pattern, left top, left bottom, top right, and work your way around. You usually just pretty much go down pretty even. I'm just in the habit of doing it this way, so. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, we're just gonna check them, make sure that's snug. You're not torquing the crap out of these things. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get our hoses back on here. started with the back one. And I like to put these back on. Now these spring clamps, I'm comfortable with these spring clamps. They were pretty tight, and I was gingerly when I took them off. So we're gonna use them, get them back on here. Giving them a little bang to tighten them up a bit. And we got this bottom one. All right, now we can put our upper radiator hose clamp back on, or we could put our fan on right now, and we got to put our shroud back in. So why don't we get the shroud back in? We've closed our petcock, so the petcock is closed. So we're going to set the shroud back in place, the bottom of it, and then we'll slide the fan on and tighten that up. And they give you a little sleeve here so that you don't damage the threads. And then after we get the fan on, we can sit the upper radiator hose on it. All right, so we're gonna put our tensioner assembly back on. It's got two spaces here built into it, and those are gonna go kind of like this. And then this bottom one goes in here. So we can catch the bottom one, and they're all 15 millimeters. Catch the top one. We put a little never sees on. So we got them all caught. We'll run them down with the gun, and then we're just gonna tighten them by hand. Snug these up. All right, so we're good there. We got a couple options. We can put the belt on right now, or slide the fan on, or vice versa. We'll show you how to just get the fan on real close. Tony wanted to talk about the AC compressor, and it's down here, and the belt is right here. And we put a new belt on this not long ago. And it's got a tensioner right there, and you're just gonna put your 3/8 ratchet. Your 3/8 ratchet would go down into the tensioner to pull it down to get your belt off. Now, to get this belt off, you have to remove the other AC belt and the shroud. You can do it from underneath if you have a lift, but it's very difficult. It's probably just easier to remove the top half of the shroud and work around the fan. You don't have to drain any coolant down to do that. But you would have to take the top half of the shroud off with the covers like we did. And you can just pull the upper radiator hose right out of the way, so you know you're not draining any coolant. But if you need to replace that AC belt, now would be the time to do it. But we've replaced it recently, so we don't need to change it now. So we're gonna put the fan on first. We're gonna sit the shroud, I should say, in first. We have our petcock all tight over there. And we're just gonna fit the shroud, the lower part of the shroud down in place. clip our clip back in over here, and then we're gonna set the fan on. Now it fits into these two notches over here. There's one right here. It fits right into that notch there, and it fits into the one over here as well. And then we're going to line this hole up. Right there. Okay, that's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but all right, that's locked in. Yeah. This side's locked in. Okay, we got our clip locked back in, the two bottom part of the shroud in. We'll grab the fan now and get the fan threading on this, and there's plenty of room to get the belt in, so I'm not worried about it. So we're gonna put the fan on first because we can kind of spin this on our own, which is nice. Be careful with the radiator when you're putting this thing down here. This thing should start very easily. Okay, we're gonna get the belt around it, and then after we get the belt on it, we're holding it tight, we're gonna smack the wrench so that it locks it in place, because you can't really grab onto this new pulley now. And we just smack the spanner wrench when we have it in place, and that usually, we never have an issue. So we're gonna get the belt and put the belt on right now. And the belt went around the crankshaft pulley first, like such. It came up around the water pump, down around the power steering pump, up over the alternator. And on this side, we're going around the tensioner. We got around the water pump. Now we just got to push it down under the idler. And we're going to get our 15mm socket set up. We're making sure that we're in all our grooves. And we're going to get our ratchet set up here. Slide that underneath. I'm going to look and make sure we're in all our grooves. Those are all good. Now here's where we take the, we're going to hold a little tension on this tensioner, and we're going to put the spanner wrench on, and we're just going to give it a smack with a hammer, and that's going to be it. It's going to be tight. And it looks like this is an 1 3/8 wrench. So we got this sitting right here. And we're just going to give it a smack. I got a little bit of tension on the tension. If I put too much, I'll back the bolt off. So I'm just going to give it a little smack like that. And that's all I got to do. That ain't going anywhere. And this wrench is 1 3/8 to 1 7/16. Looks like 1 3/8. So, and it came with the OTC kit for the fan clutch tools. I'm sure all the local pot stores guys rent these things out. But you do really need to have this, or you need to have some big wrenches to get in there. If you had a full-size 1 3/8 or 1 7/16, you would be able to get it in there. So, all right, so now we got that together. We're going to put our fan shroud on the top, and then we can slide our hose on and the clamp on last. So the only thing we got left to do right now is get our fan shroud set in place and put our upper radiator hose on. The belt is on. The fan clutch is tight. The belt routing is all proper. All our clamps are on. The lower hoses for the water pump. We just got to get the shroud on the top. Okay. Remember, these have the button plugs on them and the 2 bolts for the 10s. I like to catch the 2 bolts for the 10s and then line up my button plugs. The little never-sees on these. Started these. Let's see if we can get these to line up. Okay, there's little alignment pins here, right there, and those are lined up. So now we can push our plugs back down in place. Okay, got one there. They have a small arm. Okay. All right, that one plugged. I'll come over this side, we'll get these 2. Okay, we got the dowel in there, it's lined up. Okay, all 4 plugs are in. Now we can take our hose. I don't really need to have it hooked anymore. Take this off. Stick it over here. All right, this goes in and plugs back in place. Now we kind of know the position of the hose. It kind of goes a lot of different ways, so you don't have to worry too much. Now we took the clamp off and we left it on the water pump. So we're gonna put this clamp on. It's gonna be the same way that we took it off. All right, there it is. Okay. And it's in the same spot. That's where I want it. Now this hose is not gonna rub on anything. This one rubs, this one goes under here, like that. That clips in back into here. All right, so we got our clamp on. It's set down nice. It's in the same position. We got our new hose, our original hose on here. It's not rubbing anywhere. It's kind of what we want. And then we have the shroud on, all the buttons into the shroud. At this point, we can put the ductwork back in here, throw the cover on, and we're gonna fill it up with coolant. Let me get the ductwork back in place right now. All right, we got the ductwork here. Slide this back in. Okay, that fits in good. Kind of got to roll this down into place. You want to make sure you're not pinching the gasket here at all. So, yeah, that feels good. Okay. Okay, the gasket's good. That all looks good there. And this is in place. We can put our tool with the hose back in there, line that up. And that just helps this thing settle in a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna tighten this up. You can feel the rubber all the way around it went on. You can put a little penetrating oil or grease in that to help you Let's tighten them down. We got the two here, we can snug up now. For the fan shroud. We actually put some Never-Seas on that too. Okay, we're gonna snug this up. That. All right, so we got this thing back together. We're gonna put the cover back on over here right now, put the button plugs in, and then we'll stuff the cover back on that. We're gonna fill it up with coolant and check for leaks. And line the cover up with the holes. Let's get the button plugs in here. I like to get them all in place before I push them down or lock anything, just so everything moves around a little bit. Okay. All right, let's put the cover on the top of the engine here. This just tucks back in these little fingers back here. You can look at it while you're putting it on. You can feel it when it falls in. And then you can start threading this with your fingers. Make sure you got it threaded. And we do. And that's it. All right, let's fill it up with coolant and check the leaks. So we're filling our antifreeze back up. As much as we tried not to make a mess, we made a mess. Boys, these trucks, man. No. Antifreeze is good to 34 below. We're reusing what we can, and we'll top it off with some new stuff. It's not Dex Cool, so it's been changed already. It's nice and clean. It's good to 34 below, so we're going to use this up and then top it off with some new coolant that we bought. So we filled our system. We pressure tested it to 15 pounds. We're going to back it outside and let it run. It's going to burp, and we're going to end up getting a couple more quarts of antifreeze in it because, you know, we have the thermostat, water pump out and everything. Right now it's chock full, and we've done the pressure test videos. So when you do a cooling system, when you open it up, you really should pressure test it to make sure. And we're going to run this thing outside. And like I said, everything underneath drips on these things. It sucks. So if you pressure test it, at least you know you don't have a leak. And we're going to top it off after it burps, and probably going to take 2 more quarts of antifreeze, and we'll be good.